What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance Crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Before I jump into it, I just want to let people that are signed to my Patreon know that the next episode of Derek will be coming out sometime tomorrow. I probably won't have enough time to be able to take care of it today because I am currently working on it with a camera that is very limited with its battery. I don't have a cable to connect it to my computer properly, so I can't just have it running. So I can't really do too many TV shows. I already did one and the battery's already pushing it. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of this and maybe one more reaction. But that's pretty much it. So welcome to DaVinci, or Devon DaVinci, or DaVinci Reacts if you want to talk about the actual series. If you've watched any of my videos in the past, then you know that I'm a real big person when it comes to taking accountability and doing things that are right, even if it is something that may not be beneficial to you. I've done videos related to the Armenian genocide and Turkey and things like that. By the way, like I said, I love Turkey. It's just that's one of the things that I feel should be acknowledged on their end. Just like how I had someone from Turkey point out with America, like, hey, what about your treatment of the Indians? You're right. That is 100% a genocide, and we should call it that. But getting into it, I figured this would be another video that would be good to check out. This is the worst war crimes committed by the United States during World War II. Because usually during World War II, you hear about the war crimes of Germany, you hear about the war crimes of Japan, which, by the way, is really crazy. I mean, I just recently learned about Unit 731, and it messed me up. Let's put it that way. It messed me up. But, by the way, I'll probably do a video related to it at some point. But let's go ahead and jump into this because, like I said, you hear about war crimes from them. That's usually what it's associated with, but everybody committed war crimes. The Soviet Union, for sure. America and Great Britain have done it too, but it's not really acknowledged because usually it's something that since I don't want to always say that the winners write history, even though I said that in the past. I've come to learn that's not necessarily the case, but in this regard, I think it kind of is. We can kind of choose what we want to cover and what not to cover. But anyway, let's jump into it. This video was made by the Infographics show. I'll have a link for their channel at the end of the video. If you want to check them out, make sure you wait till the last 30 seconds of the video. An icon will pop up. You click on it. It'll take you to their channel. You can like, comment, subscribe, watch all the other good stuff. And I will have a link for the original video in the description box down below. For anybody that wants to watch the video without me pausing and talking over it. Or if you just want to watch the video yourself, you may be a reactor, whatever. You want to try to get the source video. That is the link that you'll use to get it. Let's do this.
When one thinks of atrocities committed during the Second World War, the two most obvious culprits that immediately come to mind are Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. However, the Allied powers, including the...
Speaking of which, just wanted to acknowledge, I have heard people from like Korea and stuff talk about how the Imperial Japanese flag to them holds the same like level of symbolism as the Nazi flag to the Western world. And I mean, I can definitely see why. This is an interesting thought. I believe the Imperial Japanese flag is still used for the military portions, right? Am I wrong about that? I associate it with E Honda from Street Fighter, but I think they still use that flag.
Come to mind are Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. However, the Allied powers, including the United States, were just as culpable in violating international laws that they held their defeated foes in account to after the war. Though the Allies did not commit the atrocities on nearly the scale that the Axis powers did, they nonetheless committed actions that, if committed during any other conflict, would have severely tarnished the reputation of the fighting forces and surely brought about criminal charges. The main reason why so many...
That is true. During the Tokyo trials, there was a situation where they were talking about trying one of the admirals because they were, I believe they were sinking American ships, but they weren't allowing any like POWs to escape the waters, like instead of like helping the people that surrendered, they just like let them drown. And the person that was tried for it, I believe, actually got away because their defense, they said that the United States was doing the exact same thing, and it was proven that that was true. So it's like, oh, we can't really arrest them if like the judge themselves are the ones that also did the same thing. So always stick to that moral high ground. You never know when you might be able to pull it out of your pocket and use it.
These crimes took decades to come to light is that even though in the few instances there were investigations, these were typically dropped or hidden away. This was done so as to not tarnish the reputation of the United States as they attempted to rebuild relations with their former foes. After all, if the international community had concrete and complete investigations of many of these incidents, it probably would have hurt the rebuilding process and made Americans look like hypocrites in the midst of high-profile war crime trials in Germany and Japan. But now that there's been almost 80 years for the wounds of World War II to heal, local communities in Germany and Japan have been taking a more critical eye of the picture-perfect image cast in the history books as Americans being the sinless liberators. Here are 3 examples of cases that often took 40 or more years to come to the public attention. Number 1. The Shinonia Massacre. The Battle of the Bulge was the costliest battle the U.S. Army ever endured, and almost won Hitler a war-altering victory.
The biggest battle America's ever endured. Bigger than the Battle of Antietam or Gettysburg? Somebody give me the numbers on that.
Which was the costliest battle the U.S. Army ever endured, and almost
costly.
won Hitler
Maybe it means
a war-altering
money.
victory if it were not for the weather, bad luck, and tenacious defense of U.S. troops. During the opening days of the invasion, U.S. troops were taken aback and quickly fell back in the face of the German onslaught. However, after the first few days, U.S. defenses started to stiffen and inflicted incredibly high casualties on the advancing Germans. As a result of high casualties and seeing their last hope for a military victory dashed, German commanders were furious and wanted revenge. As a result, there were multiple massacres of captured American troops during the Battle of the Bulge, but the most famous was the Malmedy Massacre. The Malmedy Massacre occurred on December 17, 1944, and was the brutal execution of 84 defenseless American prisoners of war in a field. When U.S. troops recaptured the area and found the survivors, word quickly spread, and Americans from Eisenhower on down to the privates were outraged. Though top American officers never issued such orders, lower-ranking officers at the regimental level and below did in fact issue orders that no prisoners would be taken in the counteroffensive, though the official U.S. Army history of the battle recounts that though some units did in fact issue these orders, it was doubtful that they were ever carried out. However, one unit certainly did, and that unit was the 21st Armored Infantry Battalion of the 11th Armored Division. As part of their efforts to push the Germans out of Belgium, on New Year's Eve 1944, they, along with another unit, were tasked with clearing the village of Shinonia of Germans. However, the attack did not go so well for them. They were beaten back by stubborn German resistance and ferocious German artillery fire. The unit suffered heavy casualties and was forced to dig in to await further reinforcements at daylight. Early the next morning on January 1, 1945, the attack resumed. Through sheer will, the Americans overcame the resistance, and that is when the massacre began. Though the Americans were certainly looking to kill members of the Waffen-SS, the Germans in the village were all regular army soldiers of a Panzer Grenadier Division. Nevertheless, these were the first Germans they had taken prisoner since the new order, and several men in the unit elected to execute that order. According to men who witnessed the massacre, groups of 25 to 30 Germans were led away into the snow-covered fields and shot without warning. In total, it was estimated that 80 Germans were executed in this fashion. Once their deeds were done, the unit moved out the next day on its push toward Germany.
Now, I'm not going to necessarily say that it's good, because there's a reason why you don't do things like that. Remember that moral superiority card I was talking about earlier? But in this case, I think I'd be willing to make an exception, given the fact that it was a retaliation. Now, don't get me wrong, they still should be punished for doing what they did. Otherwise, what the hell is the point of rules? They should still be held accountable for the actions they committed. All I'm saying is, I understand. Like Chris Rock said, I ain't saying you should have done it, but I understand. But that being said, like I said, still got to be held accountable for the actions that were committed. At the same time, well, I can acknowledge the crazy things the Nazis did. Still, just because they did it don't mean that it gives you the right to do it in return. It certainly also doesn't mean you're supposed to bring them to freaking America and have them working for NASA. So there's that too. So it's like somewhere in between flat out massacre and recruiting them with high-paying jobs. Somewhere in the middle there, that's where the answer lies.
Number 2, the Dachau executions. Without a doubt, the scenes
heard
that
about
greeted
this.
anyone who witnessed a recently liberated.
Now, this I completely wash. I don't mind at all. This I don't mind at all. If this is what I'm thinking they're going to talk about, when the soldiers discovered the concentration camps and the stuff that happened there. Let's just say the Germans that gave up and were willing to be taken as POWs in those concentration camps. Let's just say suddenly their options became a lot more limited once the Americans and the Soviets and stuff found out about those, the purpose of those camps. Yeah, I'm not losing any sleep over what happened to those people.
Concentration camp must have been horrible. Decaying corpses, walking skeletons, the burning sensation of ash and fumes in the air, combined with the putrid smell of death, would have made even the most hardened soldier turn white. For troops of the battle-hardened 3rd Battalion of the 157th Infantry Regiment of the 45th Infantry Division, the scene was more than enough to break the discipline forged during many months of brutal combat. On the morning of April 29, 1945, the unit was tasked with capturing the infamous Dachau concentration camp. Though not a death camp, it housed at the time approximately 40,000 half-dead prisoners and had been the final resting place of tens of thousands of people for over the past decade. The men expected fanatical resistance from the several hundred SS guards who would rather die than face inevitable punishment for their crimes in the last week of the war. After fighting through some light resistance, the men of the 3rd Battalion reached the camp by the late morning and were greeted with machine gun fire from some of the towers. After these guns were silenced, it seemed though the spirit of the German resistance in the camp was broken, and those not killed in the assault were eager to escape with their lives. However, for some of the guards, they would not do so even after they surrendered. There are many different versions of the events that took place after the Germans had surrendered, which is probably due to the chaos and limited individual culpability. What is known as the most famous event of the massacre were the events surrounding the infamous coal yard picture. In this picture, a young American machine gunner was photographed shortly after shooting about 16 SS guards while they stood along a wall. Several of their comrades that survived the initial volley can be seen with their arms still raised in surrender. It was this photograph that helped expose the greater portion of the events that unfolded that day. The still unknown soldier is one of many who shot captured SS troopers that day. According to eyewitness testimony, one soldier shot 4 SS men as they cowered inside of a train car and then stepped into the car to give each man a finishing shot to the head to make sure they were dead. Another man allegedly shot several Germans as they came out of a guard tower with their hands raised in surrender. Still, what was more shocking were the reprisals wrought by the former inmates on their captors under the watchful eye of American soldiers. Seeking their revenge, camp survivors allegedly murdered dozens more SS guards by beating them to death with shovels and stomping them to death. The American troops understandably did not intervene, since they undoubtedly could not even imagine the horrors these survivors had gone through. Once news got out of the massacre, General Patton, who had become military governor of Bavaria, where the camp was located by this point, ordered an investigation. This investigation, which was not released publicly until 1991, detailed the flagrant violations of international law at the hands of U.S. troops. However, he decided not to press charges, as he did not see this as being helpful to the U.S. cause. Even today, it is safe to say that though the killings themselves were illegal, they got a much better death than what their victims did.
Exactly. Now, don't get me wrong. So far, and I was about to say this earlier, but I was going to wait until the story ended. So far, this video seems like it's very American friendly, because all the atrocities being pointed out so far are like retaliations or things like. I'm pretty sure there were some atrocities somewhere where somebody just like did something stupid and was like, "Hey, let's see what we can do with this weapon and these random ass people over here, this random German family. Let's see what we can." I'm sure something happened. So I will say so far it seems kind of skewed in a certain direction. That being said, the things they are addressing right now are things that did happen and are things that should be acknowledged as well. The first one they brought up, like I would still like hold them accountable and things like that. The second one, the one at Dachau, yeah, no, I'm 100% free. I do not care. You can. I would encourage. See, I was about to say I would I would give the weapon, like a gun, to some of the prisoners and let them like fight against unarmed SS guards. But then it's like, they've been through so much already. Are you going to put, like, because killing somebody changes you. It changes who you are as a person. So you giving them a weapon and saying, oh yeah, sure, go over there and kill that person. Even though they did stuff to you, it's like, would you be okay with allowing them to do that? Like, I would rather, because I'm a soldier, I'm trained for this, I would rather take the gun and kill them for you. You can tell me what you want me to do to them, but I'll try to make sure you're not around to see it. Maybe give you some type of souvenir after it's done. But yeah, I mean, in that regard, I don't care. Now let's go ahead and check out the other ones.
Number 3. No Prisoner Policy, April 1945. Not only did the Waffen-SS face indiscriminate execution in the final days of World War II, but so did the regular German army. After U.S. forces crossed the Rhine River in March of 1945, it was common that many units issued their own take-no-prisoner orders, as had been common in the aftermath of the Malmedy Massacre in 1944. However, the reason why many of these units issued such orders, or at the very least tolerated this kind of behavior, was due to multiple factors. The first one was the confirmed reports of concentration and death camp survivor testimony. These reports had slowly started to filter into the mainstream media, especially as the Red Army made its advances into Poland and Eastern Germany, where many of these camps were located. U.S. troops who had either seen the first-hand evidence or witnessed the footage were incensed at the atrocities and vowed to punish those responsible. Another contributing factor to the take-no-prisoner attitude in March and April of 1945 was the fact that, in the American point of view, the war was over, and those still fighting were the most guilty of war crimes who were seeking to avoid punishment. Therefore, if they encountered any sort of resistance, especially in the face of their inevitable defeat, it was assumed that those resisting must be SS or guilty of some sort of crime who would rather just die in battle than face justice.
Okay, so that's wrong. Now, there are some soldiers that weren't a part of those crimes. The proper way to handle it is to apprehend them, investigate them, and see like what they took part in. If they were part of it, then fuck them. But if they weren't, then you got to treat them just like any other soldier caught in war.
Though many SS troopers and similar guilty parties did just that, there were in fact large numbers of regular German troops in the field who did resist only because of the lies fed to them by their government. It was this tenacious resistance in the waning weeks of World War II in Europe that would be their downfall. Atrocities committed by individuals were commonplace. Famed historian Stephen Ambrose claimed of the 1,000 veterans he interviewed, 1/3 said they saw executions take place. These countless murders were embodied in large-scale shootings in places like Jungholzhausen and Treseberg. During the battle for Jungholzhausen on April 15, 1945, the men of the 254th Infantry Regiment suffered heavy casualties. Though this was a combined action by the regular German army and the Waffen-SS, the army soldiers were eager to surrender, as reported by the local townspeople. However, it seems as though because of heavy casualties inflicted by the SS, the surrendering soldiers were treated just the same. In one of the most notable instances of the massacre, 13 German soldiers who had dug a trench behind a barn surrendered as soon as they saw the Americans. However, when the farmer's son went to check on them the morning after the battle, he found all 13 men were killed with a shot to the back of their neck while on their knees. Yet another villager witnessed an American soldier gun down 4 captured SS men when he told them to run away from him. Several other witnesses came forward that they were ordered to dig a mass grave for victims, which numbered around 30. In the town of Treseberg on April 19, 1945, a similar yet sadder story unfolded. Members of the 18th Infantry Regiment of the 1st Infantry Division took very heavy casualties in the battle to take Treseberg, with around 60 Americans confirmed being killed, including a battalion commander, who the Americans claimed was shot by a sniper wearing civilian clothes. As a result, the Americans were incensed and wanted to take revenge. They found their opportunity when they stumbled upon a group of 10 Hitler youth sent to the area. According to local historians, these young boys, all around the age of 14, had just graduated infantry training at a nearby camp and were ordered to the front line. As they were making their way forward, they were surprised and captured by the Americans on the road. One of the boys managed to run away and hid, thus providing testimony for the villagers to reclaim the bodies of the boys after the American troops shot them. Soon after, the villagers had the boys buried with several German soldiers killed in action, and in 1951 had them exhumed to prove their murder, with the medical examiner confirming each boy had been shot in the back of the neck. These 3 crimes are just a highlight of the violations of international law committed by the U.S. forces during World War II.
See, now that's heinous.
Unfortunately, the US military was not very interested in investigating and much less prosecuting war crimes either during or after the war. In fact, most of the records and testimony actually come from sources outside the US, like the German Army War Crimes Bureau, that investigated reports of crimes against Germans by the Allies. Unfortunately, there are undoubtedly untold stories of more crimes committed by US forces that may never see the light of day, but hopefully further scholarship in this area will set the record straight that not all Americans who served in World War II did so with honor.
Yeah, see, now that last one, that was 100% war atrocity. Now that's something that we definitely need to be held accountable and like show people like, okay, we need to fix this. This is something that can't happen ever again, and we need to acknowledge it, and we need to make amends to the people that we did it to, namely like the families that weren't associated with the SS. We should do something. But with that being said, I hope you guys, well, I don't want to say enjoyed, but I hope you guys were informed by this video. If you feel like you learned something, make sure you hit that like button. If you want to see more videos just like it, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I react to history related videos a lot, and I look forward to seeing what you guys have to say. Speaking of which, if you feel like you have something to say, don't be afraid to jump into the comment section. I definitely love seeing people comment and things like that, so I can possibly participate if it's something that intrigues me in some way. I love seeing conversations, mainly because I know you guys usually give more information to add more context to the videos, information that might have been overlooked and things like that. So it definitely helps me learn more when it comes to these subjects. So I'm telling you, when I make videos, one of the biggest things I look forward to is your comments. I really mean that. Like I'm like refreshing the comment section. On YouTube, we have a thing that collects all the comments that are made on our entire channel. So like anytime somebody makes a comment, it usually pops into our like comment thread thing, and we can just like look at it and see what video it goes to and things like that. So whenever somebody leaves comments, I'm always like refreshing just to see like what the new comments are. I love participating in the community we have. So feel free to be a part of it. That's pretty much it. I'm going to try to jump to this next video real quick. I'm going to give you the deuces. I look forward to seeing you guys on a future video. And until then, I'm Devon DaVinci, and hopefully you've been enlightened. Deuces.